Welcome to my video about creating texture atlases. This is for a specific assignment in SGD 172, but it's just a good video in general about using texture atlases. This is the texture atlas we're going to be working with, and I'm not going to use all of this, but this is the texture atlas for the assignment. And one thing I do want to note for the assignment is this is the square down here where you have extra space to work. Like you can add this is the area you get to add your own texture. Obviously pick something that matches, but if you want to add a little bit of something for your idea, this is the little area that you have to add stuff to it. So with that said, I did create a small example, of using it. And this is what I have. So I have a floor. I have a wall going on with some trim, and I made a real quick beam with that material. And I did, add some flair to it. It does have like nice trim. There's trim along the wall. I probably could go into a little bit more detail. Like I could go in and extrude out some of this trim. It would make it a little bit not so flat, but this is just meant to be a real quick demonstration and not something, I could spend a little bit more time and it would pop out pretty fast. And it's fun working with texture atlases because you'd be surprised how much detail you can get. Sometimes the limitation of working with a texture atlas makes you be even more creative and, add details you wouldn't have thought of before. So the first thing I did want to show you was how I did this floor. And let me just delete the old one. I did start off with just a, let me bring it over, like a single panel. And this is just a 1 by 1, like 1 meter by 1 meter plane. And if we look at the unwrap for it, I unwrapped it to just this one square. And I did that by, I selected it and I planered it and then I moved it. And I did, I'm going to show this a little bit later, but like the textile density. But if you want to look at the textile density on this, it is set to, let's do a get. About 5, like it's ever so slightly more than 5, but I had to go in like adjust it just so it fit perfectly with that, because since this is tileable right here, if we duplicate this a couple times, so if we go back up and like select it, hit control D, they will line up perfectly. And if you even want a little bit more variation with this, we could go in with our rotate tool and you could rotate these. Like if we rotated it 90 to, not that axis. I always mess up my axes. There we go. Maybe another 90. Like you can kind of swap these around where you're rotating them 90 degrees and you'll get an ever so slightly different pattern. And one thing that will make this a lot easier is if you go into your move tool settings, make sure you have absolute turned on and like the step snap. And if we're set to like a nice, let me turn my grid on real quick, just so I can show you how fast this can go. I always lose that. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Display the grid. I have it just a 1 unit by 1 unit. Let me get one set up really nice right on that grid. Let me move this to the grid. Like if you need to build that floor, you can turn like your step snaps to 1 so that now when you, select it, Control D and move it. Oop, I'm off a little bit. Oh, it's because I'm in the middle. Let me change it to 0.5. That might snap a little bit better. I can easily, select it, Control D, move it over. We can even start selecting multiples of this. Let's see, for template. Like you can select all 4, Control D, slide it down. And I think that's actually all I need. Let me see if I can line this up better. There we go. And we have our floor done. So I know one of the ways that students are taught is about just kind of grouping these together, you know, and calling it a day. But that's really not a good method for this. Like, we really don't want to just group it. We actually want to combine this into a single mesh. The reason is when we import this into Unity, we don't want to, you know, if we group it and try to import it in, these are just still going to be separate elements, kind of like if you like fold it open. So it would be better to combine these and into one single mesh. And the way that you do that, let me show you real quick. First things first, select all of these elements you want to combine. So I'm going to select all of those floors. I'm going to come up underneath mesh and I'm going to choose combine. And what this will do is it's going to combo them all into one. But the one big step you have to do next before you're fully done with this, because notice that they are still kind of there, but even though this is it, it's because of that history issue. So we need to go up and do an edit, delete all by type history, and it's going to get rid of all those, and then you just have a single floor. The last thing you need to do is we do need to make sure that all of our vertices are combining too, because if we just select the one, we can see that they're not connected, and that's not really, you know, what's the point of doing this if they're still all separate pieces? So I'm going to select all my verts. I'm going to come up to edit mesh and I'm going to merge my vertices, and we can actually see what happens. So I have 32 vertices right now. Then I'm going to go to edit mesh and merge them, and I'm down to 15 vertices. So we definitely, you know, comboed some stuff together, and this is actually one solid mesh, and it'll export better. It'll be cleaner, it'll light map better, you know, it's just going to work better. So I know I talk a lot about in class that you should not have any more edges than is necessary. And, you know, you would think based on stuff I've talked about in the past, like, but we have all these extra cuts in there. This is an acceptable use of having extra cuts. It is not doing anything, you know, to change the silhouette of the object, but it is doing something in the UV, and that's really important. We're saving a lot of space by not having to import in an image this big for our floor. Having the extra cuts in there for UVs is cheaper for game engines than having multiple giant images to take, you know, that level of detail. So if we go into our UV editor, let me select it. You know, they're all stacked up on this spot. So, you know, we're only, you know, this is part of the one image, and ultimately we will have one giant, you know, everything's going to be on here. So when it imports in, depending on how you import it, we can also, you know, in the editor, you should set them all to static. They should batch together, so your draw call is going to be pretty low with this. So let me add in a little bit of, like, you know, I'm missing it because I deleted out the floor, but I had that little bit of a like trim on the bottom, and because I do want to kind of show something out to you. So, you know, you have your floor, you want to add a trim. So I'm going to actually go through and select my edge, and then I want to change a quick setting. I'm going to go back into this tool setting, and I usually leave this on. For one thing, I need to change that snap down probably to a 0.1 so I can just snap it over. But the other really cool thing that you can turn on, and I don't know if you're ever taught this, but it's really handy with doing this kind of work, is this preserve UVs button. And we're going to turn it on, and I'll show you what it does. Well, let me turn it off and do it, and then I'll turn it on and show you. So normally, if we were going to do an extrude on this edge to create like that extra space, you know, we hold down Shift and we extrude. That's not doing it the way I need it to do. Oh, there we go. It's kind of, it's not keeping that UV that we already have. It's like kind of just forcing like whatever UV's on this. And that's not really what we want. We don't really want to have to unwrap this again. We want it to stay at consistent size. And, if we can lessen the amount of times we unwrap things, that'd be great. So I'm going to make sure that's set to 0.1. I'm going to turn on preserve UVs and watch what happens now when I extrude this out. Oh, hold on. Why is it doing that? It's not doing what it's supposed to. And it turned it back. Let's try again. It's not preserving. Sorry about that. What is... Give me a second. Sorry. 1 second. This is not behaving the way it's supposed to. I guess maybe I'm mistaken and you can't quite do what I'm trying to do yet. But I'm going to show you that preserve UVs in a second. I guess it's 3S Max that you can do that particular thing in and not Maya. But I do still want to just extrude this edge. So I'm going to just pull it out. And I'm going to select these polygons. And I guess I can show you a little bit more of like UV unwrapping to kind of get it close to what it was before. And once I have those selected, I'm going to go to my UV editor. And, it's all kind of messed up. So first things first, I don't want to accidentally... So I start moving it around. Oh, I guess it is detached. I'll show that tool in a second then. Okay, so we have this. I'm just going to hit automatic. And it gives us the nice unwrap. One thing I might also want to do is I might want to see if I can just set it to the same textile density as this. Since, this is unwrapped nicely, but it's a different textile density. And when you're doing texture atlases, it's fine if the textile density is different because you might be using your textures in different creative ways. But if you're trying to at least get close, I can select that floor piece, say get, it's underneath tools, textile density. I can get that. Then I'll go to my new one and I'll make sure I can set that. And I guess it's already accurate, which is good. I'm surprised it is, but I guess like if it wasn't, let's see. Let's modify this so it's not. We'll make it really big. We'll set it. Yeah, it was. Okay, cool. I guess that's what happens when you build your textures on powers of 2. Everything kind of works out nicely. But now that I have this separate piece, I can use whatever I want on this to create that trim. And I used, I think, a piece down here before, but what if I wanted to use something a little bit different? Let's go to let's rotate this and move it. Like, what if I wanted to use like this piece right here? This might look kind of neat, where it's kind of like a rivet set. Oops, I accidentally deselected that. Let's try it again. And let's line that up. And let's see what it's looking like. So that might work. It is tileable, but it doesn't go the full length. So I might have to select these ends and detach them. And the way that we can do that is just do a cut sew, create UV shell. It'll detach those selected, and I can just slide them over and put them back on there. And we have that new thing right there. So the one thing I did want to show you, and I was trying to show you earlier, is like what happens. We'll do it right here. I built this wall a similar way. It's a different object. And this is what that unwrap looks like. So we have the brick, we have that trim down there, and we have this trim for along the top. What if we start to build it and we realize like maybe we did a cut or like a connect and it's not quite where we want it to do, but we really don't want to mess with it because what if like this is wrong? What if this needs to be higher than it's supposed to be? And we come in here and we start to like wiggle this. And it's messing with our UVs. And then we'd have to, try to eyeball it, fix it. This is where, I'm sorry that didn't work earlier. This is where this comes in. Where we can, underneath the tool settings for our move tool, click on preserve UVs. So just click that on. And if that's clicked on, now if we move these, it's what it actually does. I have to try to fit some windows in here. Let's see if I can do this. So let me make this smaller. I'll probably put it in the corner. So this is what it looks like. And then I start moving it. Notice that it's like auto fixing our UVs for us. So this is a real, hey, actually that looks kind of neat. Maybe I wanted it to be more like that because, I'm varying up my wall a little bit. There's just like one line of bricks. And this is like an easy way, when you're doing texture atlases to tweak things, fix things. I swear you could keep that on when you're extruding, but I guess not. I think I might be thinking of 3ds Max with that because I use that all the time. It's a little bit frustrating, but you could always extrude it a little bit and then you can see how it's still trying to UV fix. It's really weird. I might look more into that one. And see, but I don't want to waste time in the video. Okay, so the last thing I did want to show you is this pillar. I have pillar example, base, and base 1. And what this pillar is actually doing, and this is, I've told this to students before because this is a common trick. If you can't get seams to fix, like notice there is kind of a seam there because we are using a table texture. There's nothing wrong with putting something to block it. I mean, it looks nicer, it's adding some, more interesting detail to this environment, but it also hides that seam. So you can't tell that it's not tiling perfectly. This is a very good example of, you kind of modify what you want to do as you go because you work with what you got. And this is one of those tricks where you can hide seams by, I've told people before, like, oh, there's a seam in the wall. I'm like, well, why don't you just put a pillar in front of it and hide it? Like, oh, okay, that works. One, it adds more interest to the architecture. Two, do you really want to try to spend an hour just perfectly lining up some stuff? You can fix stuff a little bit by, selecting faces and going into that UV editor and like wiggling the textures, sometimes like flipping their faces or like, sliding it around, you'll get something that lines up pretty well. Like for instance, I got this lined up really well. This is fully tileable, so that's not a problem. You wouldn't realize until I zoomed in really close that this is tiling, like right in the middle because of just the way the UVs are done on this one. Let me select them. So you kind of see it here. I guess it's right there. So there's oh yeah, now you can see it. There's like a little bit of a blip, but all I did with that is I went in and, I selected, like these faces are attached, these two. And I kind of wiggled it in here, like while looking in the screen until it lined up close enough. But, if sometimes you just can't do that, and you are going to want to just block it and problem solved. Good enough. This pillar is built the same way. And what I'm probably going to do is I will save out this example. I'll upload this example. So if you want to open up my file and look at it, you should be able to. One thing I did want to note, I did build this pillar in multiple pieces. And you really, again, don't group this together. You want to combo this together so that you can, it should just be one single object. And to kind of show that again, I'm going to select my pillar example and those base pieces. I'm going to go up to Mesh, combine, and it's also, then go to edit, delete all by type history. And now we just have a single pillar, and we can do with this what we want. Easier to move around, easier to make duplicates of it. And since this is, we could combo this even further if we really wanted to, since this is all using the same texture. So, mesh combine, and we probably should go through, there really shouldn't in this instance be any vertices that can merge. Oh, I guess I got 2 of them. I wonder what they were. But, make sure you merge your vertices as well. Probably go through and make sure that you do a delete all by type in history. I always just paranoidally delete all my history all the time. So do that. A couple other things real quick. I gotta go to class for this. Is, work with islands or shells or whatever they're called. I have this all as one shell. Let's say that I, for some reason, needed to move this piece off. I could just go to cut sew, create UV shell, and I can then, select by UV shell and move this. If I break apart things, I need to connect them together. I can just go in and select that edge, go to sew, and move and sew, and it'll combo those back together to get a much better UV look. So, if you have other questions, you want me to demo some stuff, feel free to ask me, but hopefully this can at least get you started on this.